All right. I gave the example. For example, if you're in a village, living in a small village, everybody knows everybody else. So this is the big thing about small villages. But how to make yourself, for example, you're born into a family as a baby, and you know everybody else, and your clustering coefficient is very high. It is 1 because everyone that you meet also knows each other. You don't know anybody else. But then you start to school, your clustering coefficient immediately drops. You go to kindergarten, you know all the other babies over there. But for example, your family, your grandmother doesn't know all the other babies there. So that makes your clustering coefficient getting smaller. So this clustering coefficient thing gives us an idea about the nature of the network. If it is if I have a clustering coefficient 1 for all of the nodes within the network, that means that everybody knows everybody else. But if I have something like this, then the whole thing is changing. I would be having some nodes that their clustering coefficient are 1, like people, they do have clustering coefficients 1, okay, because their neighbors know each other. But I have some others, like this one and this one, their clustering coefficients are not 1. They're less than 1. So this tells me that there are some, okay, it is not one chunk of a network that I have. I might be having some partitions that if I, for example, would be deleting this, I can easily make this network divided into 2. But I have this link over here. Okay? So this link is making this node and this node with clustering coefficients less than 1. So it tells me that this is not like a village. Everybody knows everybody else. It is now getting more developed, like in a city, in a town that less people know each other. So it gives me that information. So when I look at my flight data over here, comparing different countries, what do I see? I see that, first look at Turkey. Okay, now we also have to think about what was what. I have 12 people in Turkey. Their clustering coefficient is, let's see the data as well. Right, the data will tell us. Okay, as you see, there are so many zeros. In here. Let me see. Yeah. But this is the. I have 12 nodes with clustering coefficient between 0 and 0.1. So that means that. And I have like about 10, the clustering coefficient is 1. And I have about 7, clustering coefficient is between 0.6 and 0.7. So what does it tell me? It tells me, again, the same thing. When I look at the degree distribution, I was seeing something similar. When I look at the degree distribution, there was also a gap like this. So this again tells me that my network have some centralization. There are so many people with the clustering coefficient, which is, I know from the data is from 0.9 and 1. But I know that when I look at the exact data, they are all ones. So there are so many cities in Turkey, their neighbors are also neighbors. It tells me that. And there are so many cities also, again, their neighbors just are not neighbors with themselves. So it gives me the idea that this is, when I look at the in-degree distribution or out-degree distribution, it gives me the same thing. This is very centralized. This is a very centralized network. When I look at France and Germany, I see that this is way too different. I have different values here, other than 0.0 and 0.1 and 0.9 to 1.0. I have all others within these two countries. So it gives me the idea that this is not like a star shape, that there is somebody in the center, and this kind of a shape. It is the shape of basically Turkish flight data. So what this makes, for example, when I look at this, all of these people so it is basically something like that, right? I have Istanbul and Ankara. So for these guys, the clustering coefficient is 1. But for these, clustering coefficient is very low. So for the ones that very low clustering coefficient, that means that they know everyone. They are like celebrities. They know everybody. But those everyone, they don't know each other. Like we don't know all the people who knows Madonna. So that makes Madonna's clustering coefficient very, very, very low. But with this one, Germany and France, we see that it is more of a network like it is, more something like this. There are no centers. So it is very difficult to talk about that. We don't have words too much for these things. We only can make some comparisons with like celebrities, like people living in village. And I talk about that I'm going to a club and then another club. I know my family, and I'm trying to give these kind of explanations. We don't have words for that. But you would recognize immediately when you see something like this, that, okay, this is different. Germany and France, when we look at the picture itself, it looks different. And also, when you look at these values, you would understand immediately, when you look at the clustering coefficient distribution, you see that differences. So, we also talked about that together with the clustering coefficient, it's also important to know number of neighbors that node has. Because, for example, again, when you think about Madonna, you would appreciate Madonna's low clustering coefficient, but at the same time looking at her degree. Her degree is very high, and the clustering coefficient is very low. With that, you would appreciate, okay, so you would have an idea. But if somebody is, we gave an example, for example, if somebody has a lower degree distribution, but very high clustering coefficient. So maybe this person is like living in a village. That person is living in, he is, for example, living in the city, but still, he has a smaller world, because everybody that he knows each other. So he's not out of, he's not maybe going to any clubs. He's only seeing his family, but nobody else. So that gives you an idea about that person. Okay? So, but when I look at the whole population of that, this is only one person. When I look at only one number, like in these cases, only one number doesn't give me the whole idea about the whole network. That's the reason I'm looking at the distribution, the histogram. I need to know also within my network, within the population that I have, is everybody is like that, or there are some, this guy that I was talking about is an exception. Then you would understand, for example, is this a village then that I'm looking at? Everybody knows each other. So I look at the histogram. Everybody else's clustering coefficient is 1. So that means that everybody knows everybody else in this world. Or is this a world which is, there is only one guy has a very big degree, a very high degree, a very low clustering coefficient, and the rest of the people, they have moderate degrees, but high clustering, relatively high clustering coefficients. That means that that person is very, very, known, a celebrity, or maybe the leader of that gang. Okay, so by that, looking at that, you would be understanding, okay, this is this kind of a network where everyone else is just normal people. They know just moderate amounts of people. They have just normal clustering coefficients, but there is one guy there, and that guy is very, very known for everyone else. He is the, let's think about that. And this is, they do really do this. You're trying to understand the structure of a gang, of a criminal organization, okay? So you're in the police force, and you're trying to understand who is the leader of this gang. That person is the leader. That who is organizing the whole thing? Who am I, looking at? Who's the person in charge of the whole organization? Because you don't know much about